and whānau for this morning's public talk.
Kia ora koutou, mihi atu kia koutou. We're really just going to do a couple of questions per artist, and then I can talk about anything to do with the show, but I thought I would start with them. I'm going to start with Megan because she has to go and catch a plane, and so we're going to start there. So, firstly, the show is called Tātai, Tuarangi, Starseeds, Sound Waves and Ceremonies. So I stole the title really, Starseeds, Sound Waves and Ceremonies, from the artworks and the artists. Starseeds is Purapura Fitu, is Saffronn's work. Sound Waves, of course, is Maratikei's, and I think in some ways Megan's. And Ceremonies is Albert's, but I also feel like there's a kind of a ritual address within Anna's beautiful text on the wall. So that's really, and then the Māori actually came second to that, talking about the cosmos. So there we go. So the first question is, Megan, your work sign as water. I just wanted you to talk a little bit about the genesis of that work, or the origin of that work. It started as another work, and what the process is to morph it from the original work, perhaps had a different title, and just to talk about that.
Kia ora. Morena koutou. Ko Megan tōku ingoa no Ngataiharuru. And sorry about this voice, we've all kind of got different shades of husky voices going on. So my mahi that is included in this show is on these two walls, the rimu kind of sculptural works that face each other. And as Megan said, the materials have been reworked for this iteration, but they originated from a project that Taniora invited me to be a part of in 2023. It was a curatorial internship project that he was working on, and the invitation came to respond to the idea of the breath, te ha. And with that invitation, I started to think about likening the breath patterns, those kind of small, intimate breath patterns that we hold, with that of ocean tides, this kind of ongoing undulation. And that developed this project where I had sourced some rimu that was originally some skirting panels, repurposed those. There was a textile element. It was thinking about these these processes that I had inherited from my mum, walking along the shoreline that we grew up in Wellington, the southeast coast, and thinking about what Tangaroa was throwing up on this rough coastline, and a lot of those things being these little bits of sea glass that my mum would collect. And that was a practice for her to kind of regulate her own breathing and deal with the stresses of being a parent and managing a whole lot of life stuff. But it was this lovely self-care thing that me and my brother have inherited. So collecting the glass is a really special part of this project. Anyway, that was where that project started. And then last year I was invited to develop work for a gallery called Peg in Wellington, so that kind of brought me back to Poneke and to think about that space, and the context of that show was Ahua Wai, so kind of thinking about forms of water and essence of water. And for that I started to think about how really my identity has been so shaped by water. Grew up on this coastline, lots of experiences to do with water, but in an additional sense to do with my whakapapa, my taua, my great-great-great-grandmother, her name was Takaroa, which is our Kai Tahu dialect for Tangaroa. So thinking about reconnecting across space and time, and water being a really important component to that for me. The form traces the M from my signature, so thinking about identity sharing and the way that we present ourselves as well. And the M has this lovely kind of whakapapa, the modern letter M. The ancestor of that letter was one of the earliest depictions in ancient writing systems to symbolise flowing water. So I was really thinking about the way that I've come to be thinking around identity and water and that relationship. So that's the kind of backstory of the materials and the work. Oh, and the rimu. The rimu is the most important. Rimu is a material I use in my practice because of its relationship with the water due to its name. So when Māori arrived in Aotearoa and likened the foliage of this tree to seaweed that is seen throughout the Pacific called limu, rimu inherits its name that way, and I just love that kind of journeying, ebb and flow, arrival and departure that kind of is contained in that material. So then when this project was around, or being on my periphery and I was invited to be a part of it, this work specifically was approached to be included, and I just really loved this instant connection of how our ocean tides are controlled by our lunar cycles, and there's this real pull that connects to the manamataka, so it felt like it really made sense. And I think so much about the way that water reconstitutes itself and is in this ever-evolving cycle. Rain falls to our rivers, rivers to our oceans, oceans to clouds, clouds to rain, and so it worked in this kind of celestial, in-between ground sky space for me to include them, and the vertical nature of the display, I think, does that too.
Can I just ask you a little bit more about the sea glass and the significance of the sea glass? I know that your mother, you've used your mother's collection of sea glass that she collected over time, but can you just talk a little bit more about the significance of that also for you in this work?
Yeah, so blue sea glass for us in Breaker Bay, this coastline, was always very special, and as I said, it kind of connects to this practice that my mum did. But it's also the same shoreline that our Ngāi Tahu tupuna departed Wellington from when heading down south. And in addition to that, I was thinking a lot about glass in these kind of iterations, not so much like the Heineken bottles that are washing up now, but originally glass vessels contained human breath. There was this glass blowing that happened and they stretched outward, and then somehow they ended up in the ocean, and this tumbling and this breath pattern was kind of repeating, and then the moment the glass is chucked up on shore and one of us happens to stumble upon it, and our breath's taken away from this moment of witnessing this little sparkle. But that connection of this coastline and kind of looking south for my whole upbringing was really important to acknowledge where that material is sourced from for us in terms of journeying across water.
Awesome.
Yeah, kia ora.
Thank you. I'm going to move on now. Do I start with you, Ngātai, because you're sitting next to me, or start with Anna? Start with Anna. Okay. So Anna Iti, you can introduce yourself however you wish to. Anna was kind of commissioned to make this work. As I said, a lot of this cohort were in. I was really keen to bring people back together. We had time in Sharjah, the lot of us, and with the exception of Megan, who Tāniora brought in. And I just really wanted to bring everybody back together. The work that she showed in Sharjah was not the right work for this show, so it was an opportunity for Anna to make a work on the wall. And the thing that I'm most interested in with Anna is the use of text in your work. She's primarily a sculptor, but often also has a text-based practice and also works in video. But I'm really interested in her use of writing.
Tēnā koutou katoa, kei te āhua māwiwi ahau, tēnei wai ngari he whai. He uri o Ngāi Tūpoto me Ngāti hiri tēnei, tēnā koutou. Yes, and Megan, in terms of your question about text, yeah, like you said, I like to think about myself as a sculptor. That's my training, that's what I studied at art school, and I think that in the different strands of my practice, I think I approach them with the sensibility of a sculptor. But one of the things that I do a lot in my work is sort of just like so much research, like maybe too much research, and and some of the things that I read are quite boring, I guess you could say. Excuse me. But one of the processes that I've developed to help me kind of metabolize some of the stuff that I've looked at and read is through doing poetic writing, because I think that process kind of helps me figure out what the essence of what it is that I've been looking at and what I've taken away and what resonated with me through those research processes is. So I guess like over the last 10 years I've been doing that, and then when I was invited to make a new work for this exhibition, I was a little bit struggling with the premise. I was like, ooh, I don't know what it will be. But I was actually thinking about your work, Mara, and about like voices. And I was like, oh yeah, what voice is there in my practice? And I looked back through all these pieces of writing that I had done, and I could see that there was this voice in there that was actually to do with coming here. So that's where the text has come from, is kind of, and it's about time as well. Like, you don't always see the strands that connect everything in your work as you're kind of going through it. But I was like, oh, there it is. So is that clear?
I think it was the thing for me where you talked about how often you'll do a piece of text and that informs, sometimes it ends up like a piece of text on the wall most directly, other times that text will inform the sculptural work you make or the video work, and it doesn't appear as a piece of text, but you'll often start with you'll think it through in terms of a piece of writing.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I thought was really interesting, because sometimes there's a disconnect between drawing and writing. They're not the same thing. They're actually quite different, but that poetic, beautiful underpinning of the work, and also your titles, you've always used quite kind of poetic titles, a resilient heart, like a manawa, like the manawa, those things that really anchor it, but come from a very beautiful kind of place.
Well, the titles, although those pieces of writing that I do, that's where I find those things that I'm looking for in the project, like a title, or sometimes I think about the way I'm writing, and I kind of try to use some of the material language, like in processes that I would be using, and it really helps me understand what's important to the project, I guess.
So it's interesting to me too that there's a thing about, with all of these works, there's a thing about time and space, marking time and space in some shape or form, but also Megan's conversation about the breath. And then with others, with this work particularly for the first time, I really clocked that there's a repetition in terms of not just the text, but in terms of she returns to ideas. There's an idea about a bridge in there, which was also the idea of a resilient heart, like manawa that Anna won the Walsh's Prize for our most extraordinary work. I was just interested in all of that, and how I finally kind of, when I was trying to write about what that work was about, that kind of relationship. The last question, I was going to say, and Anna's is different from the other works in here where everybody's kind of looking at the sky and talking about celestial things. Hers is much more introspective and really about the rhythms of the body, and so it's kind of an interesting, she kind of turns inward when everyone else turns outward, and I kind of like that too, and its relationship to, she makes it a much more kind of embodied kind of experience, grounds it and embodies it. She takes that celestial realm and kind of ingests it in a way. The other question I had was about your use of the kauri charcoal, and for me it was about, when you were saying you were going to use it, it kind of grounds it to this place. But I just wondered how you got to the idea of making kauri charcoal and then using it.
Yes, that's a good question. So I've just opened an exhibition down in Ototahi at the Christchurch Art Gallery, which is called Ngāhere Behind a Pile of Metal. And for that project, I was really thinking about, I guess, historic kauri milling industry. So, you know, on my dad's side of the family, my great-great-great-grandfather, he was a Pākehā man who came to Aotearoa to participate in the kauri milling trade in Hokianga, and part of the way that he did that was through marrying various women, and then eventually my great-great-grandmother, because I guess access to forestry rights at that time was the process.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I, you know, when I was thinking about that project, I was thinking, you know, what's useful, what's good to think about, like what is something that's going to sustain me, and yeah, I was like, I can see that I'm a descendant of that industry, you know, and so it's probably quite important for me to think about it a little bit, and also, you know, as that resource, all of the kauri trees were milled, that land now has pine forestry plantation on it, so, you know, our whānau continues to participate in that type of industry. And it's kind of complicated, isn't it? Because it's sustaining to people, but it's it's all, yeah, you know, well, yeah, it's complex. So yeah, when I was doing that project, the work in the gallery is a large sculpture which runs sort of centrally through the space, and then I needed to. The space at CAG was quite big, and I was like, oh, it needs something else. I can't just have the big sculptures. It might not hold the space. And so I knew that I wanted to create an environment for it, and I was thinking about a drawing, and I had, yeah, I guess I didn't, so the sculpture I made there was made out of chains, made out of metal, and I didn't want to have the kauri or like wood present in the exhibition. It didn't feel right to me, but I thought the way that I could have it is this residue as charcoal, and so that's why I made the charcoal, and yeah, it's been a really beautiful material to work with. I was really happy to bring it here, but yeah, this is only the second time I've used it. And in this work, like, which I was sort of thinking about it, like, what is this called? The horizon, yeah, the horizon, and I wanted it to be grey because I'm thinking sort of it was about like maybe a liminal space, like between the night and the day, or whatever, and then to use the charcoal sort of it's supposed to be sort of like a gradation between that, but it's quite a sensitive material, so it's more abstract than...
It's really abstract, it's
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. All right, thank you. You or Mother? Mother. Okay, so Mother TK, my question to you was really about, and it's not on, obviously, because the sound work that's in the space. I commissioned Mother to make 2 sound works, actually, for Sharjah. One where he worked with Rana Hamada and Reem Sawan, a young Palestinian woman who was actually my assistant curator there, and wanted to make a song for Palestine. And it was a very beautiful... When Mother first asked me if he could make a song for Palestine, I thought, well, if we were in America, no, I'd be really concerned about what might happen, or in London even, or even in Berlin. But Sharjah is Arabic, and they're pro-Palestine, so I knew that it was a empathetic place, and I really loved that he wanted to kind of acknowledge, and this is before all the more horrific things we know are going on, and so it's called River to River, right? And Reem is a young Palestinian woman. Rana ended up, she was on the flotilla that went to Palestine and became very involved with what was going on and protesting that from New Zealand. So she became unavailable And Reem actually stepped in and really wanted to work with Mara, and it's a beautiful sound work that we made, and it was made into a record. The flip side of that record was Mara ended up having to work with people. He worked with, in that space, he was with Raven Kachon and photographs. Raven also did a sound work. He's a DNA artist. He did sound work out in the desert in a place called Al Madan. So when the UAE unified, they created a village, 12 houses and a mosque, and but they didn't live that way. So it was kind of, he talked about it as forced placement. It was a bit like a housing project. And also they built the houses wrong, so they all filled up with sand, so it was quite a beautiful space. He wanted to put the people back into there, so they never lived there, this local Bedouin tribe. And so he sat with Mara, not just because he was a sound work, but it was really about displacement, I suppose, and people's displacement. So there were photographs, and it was a tiny little space that looked out into a kind of a garden, so it was like this freedom outside. And then the other work, which is in this show, called Ngā Mata Ohina, I paired him with Daniel Boyd, and he was in a space called the Flying Saucer, which was in the shape of a flying saucer, and in the middle of it was a parabolic like sound shell in a way, and I felt like those two would both vibe together, and I wanted an experiential kind of, I wanted people to enter a space. And so we had Daniel's paintings, but he also does architectural interventions over the windows, all about light and accumulation. And Mara's work, Ngā Mata, I connected them, but they didn't actually speak. And then the ironic thing was they both came back with wanting to do things related to the moon. So I wanted to talk to Mara and ask, the question is there a difference? Mara's a working musician, performs, sings, writes music, creates albums. I wanted to ask, is there a difference? We've worked together a couple of times now in terms of sound works in gallery space. I love having sound and having just a different dimension. His work is always just kind of sits and never kind of interferes with everybody else. It's always really well pitched, never cuts across. I just wanted to know if there's a difference between writing music and performing and making compositions in that way, and what it is in terms of gallery space and how you feel about that. Sorry, that was a very long one. Blah. Sorry.
That's great, that's great. Kia ora mai tātou katoa. It's a real privilege to be here, sit with all of you, and had some wonderful conversations with people yesterday and today as well. So, tēnā koe, Megan. Thank you so much for. You've really kind of changed my trajectory of mahi in my life, and we started working together around COVID. So it really sort of saved. In the same way that Tūpoto did in the mid-90s, he sort of changed me and my mum's lives, being involved in this mahi, and so you've done the same for me again. So tēnā koe.
Thank you.
And it's hard to go into a space like the UAE, and you're just like, why am I here? You know, so you need to respond. I cry all the time now.
It's all right.
It's getting old. Start crying all the time. But so certain places and times that you have to respond.
It was wonderful to have you there, and the work with Daniel, or both works, but the work with Daniel, it completely came together without those two. And Daniel Boyd is a First Nations Australian artist, super cool dude, ex kind of basketball player, very languid and very cruisy. The ultimate cool, really. His work is kind of extraordinary. And these two just kind of vibed, and the work together just worked and was really amazing. And I knew that Daniel had this whole thing for hip-hop. So he was often putting hip-hop tracks on his Instagram. So I knew G1, who kind of ran everybody and ran the whole project. There was kind of 650 works. She kept a handle on all of them. She was like, did you ask Daniel if he wanted to work with Mud? I said, no, I've just decided that these two can kind of do it. For me, they can do it. For me, Mud's work is so extraordinary because he kind of paints with sound. So it's always come from a kind of art base. It's not just, I mean, it's not that music's not art, but I just think there's a whole other dimension there. Not everybody who makes music could do sound works. James will tell you the same thing, but there are people who can. And Mudda's one of those people who can kind of cover a threshold and move. So, yeah, I was super keen on, I needed him in Georgia, and I wanted to have him. We talked about making this record at the very beginning and early, and also Ngamata, Hina, I mean, Daniel could hold the space, but it was so much better with the sound, and vice versa. The sound could have held the space without Daniel's work, but, you know, Daniel's work and your work combined made it a much more kind of embodied kind of experience. So
that's the best part of my job is just responding to it, whether it's one of our cousins from Aotearoa or Ngāti Apakura a couple of years ago. We did a project with them and it sort of brought into a new hapori or you need to just respond to whatever they're trying to achieve and what you were trying to achieve over there. And that's the best bit. Is it's not so much about a product, but the process of just listening to them and figuring out where you're trying to go together. Yeah.
And I think often, to me, Mara, you work on feel. Like what's what you're saying. The response to. So often another work that I worked on with, or Mara worked on with me, was a show called, what was it called? Hinaki Contemplation of a Form, and he created a sound work. So I just sent him all the material and said, it's this. And then he made this beautiful work. Actually, there was another one earlier, wasn't there, with that Tamati show, which was all to do with Tahu, and you did a sound work for there. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to really talk about too was your use of, because the work is called Ngā Mata o Hina, and so the many faces of Hina, and your use of, he was the one who led me to that maramataka of Mete Te Tais, because he had referenced it. He had looked at it in terms of referencing for his sound, along with Rangi Matamua's research and kōrero around Māori astronomy, which has really, to me, shaped our understanding of astronomy in the last 5-10 years. I think his kōrero. So can you just talk a little bit about that, Maramataka?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and be a bit more eloquent.
You're fine. You're fine.
Well, yeah, I'll start by saying that I'm just learning, like a lot of us, about how te whānau marama and hina. But I was lucky to be working with Rangi to do the soundtracks for his TV series on Māori TV. So I got to hang out with him a little bit, and it was more the way that he lived that he lived his life, that he could be hyper, he'd go back to the bush and do a tahuna. And that was the most incredible thing to me, was that he was living two lives. He could be hyper localized and then international, and I guess that's the message of his kōrero, but he sort of, the zenith of that was the launching of the public holiday at Te Papa, and I remember there were 80 people from all over that had come to sort of celebrate the launching of this new sort of way of being, co-creating. It was a little insight into how we could co-create our sort of future together. So yeah, that's my way of saying it sort of had a huge impact on me and just sat with me for years after that. So yeah, that was the genesis of this mahi, and just tried a way of I imagine we all do this to an extent of it. There's something that you're trying to get a hold of, and so you do a work to sort of figure it out. You know more about that than I do, but yeah.
The maramataka is I've kind of said in the text over there, it's very unassuming, but it's very foundational. I was grateful to Mara for using or referencing that maramataka, because it's completely from here, or local. It's local to here, and I felt like Anna has connections to the north. I mean, there may be other people with connections to the north. I knew she did, but I wanted something for the people here, and that referenced that. There was a handwritten version of that maramataka in the Whangarei Art Museum, which they wouldn't loan me because they've got a rāhui on at the moment. But I just really wanted to, I suppose, acknowledge the people here, because I felt like to ground it here was important, and then push the show out. I had to have something local, and so Mita Tātai, who that maramataka's referenced to or accredited to, is from Rāwhiti, and it was passed on to him from the research that I did by a man called Nutana Mapi, who was a carver from Ohio. But it's completely, the knowledge is specific to Tītai Tukurau, and so it's related to the moon and planting and fishing, related to this particular area, and is probably something that's still used, and so it's of this place. So I was grateful to Mara to finding it in the first place, and then I thought it was really significant to put, really important to put it in the project, to kind of ground it in place here. And so thank you, Mara. And there's a whole lot of symbols about what you can, what days are good over the 30 days of a month for fishing or line fishing or whatever. And I could see how they look like notations or musical notations. So it was kind of an extraordinary thing to look at it and to think that he'd translated that into sound. So now I'm going to jump to you. Ngātai standing in for Saffronn, about her work. Saffronn's not a speaker, she's a maker, not a speaker. I did ask her if she wanted to talk, it was a hard no, which is fair and fine, and artists operate in different ways, and I completely respect where people come from. Her work, again, we commissioned this work for the Sharjah Biennale, and with Saffronn I talked through the whole project. Went up to Palmerston North one day, talked her through the whole project, because I think she's an artist, and she cares about the work, but she's not really interested in the art world so much, and she just wants to make the work. And for me, the way to work with Saffronn is you just give her everything that, this is the space, this is the budget, and then just let it go, because she doesn't need to be managed or controlled. She's just in a head making. So she's an extraordinary artist, I think, and one of a generation. this work is called Purapura Whetū. As I said, the star seeds comes from her, because Purapura Whetū, not only is it a tuku panel, but it means star seeds or stardust, and she liked the idea of star seeds. And it really is about the astronomical bodies that create the seasons and around planting and all of that. So, Ngāti, can I get you to kind of talk a little bit more about the work?
Kia ora, tēnā tātou. I'm not Saffronn. She's far better looking than this.
Close equivalent.
But just like to support Megan's acknowledgements last night, and thank the people of Parafo for conducting the ceremony during the morning, and also to the Wairo Gallery, Larissa, and the board. These have looked after us in the eye of a storm, and we're very appreciative, and it's lovely to be back up here. Saffronn's father was here earlier, Don Ratana, who his work caused a bit of kerfuffle, and so Saffronn was born into an artist's family. Her grandmother was a painter, and she had her first solo exhibition at the age of 14 and has been practicing ever since. As I look at some of these works, I'm reminded of the influence that people of the north here have had on ourselves, particularly on Saffronn and in the late Colleen Ehrlich and Manos Nathan.
Yeah.
And the connections are throughout this space. We got taken into the Matatina forest, and were able to meet with the local people, Tāne Mahuta, and she began creating these works not long before. And so I got a photo with Nigel and a star exactly like that in the Matatina in the Waikawa forest, and he's wearing it on his head. But the network and the particularly Alex and Manos and the people of the north, and Elizabeth, that we fortunate enough to have had a major influence on Saf's work. She's a painter at heart, and this is really her evolving into painting in space. And so when you look into this work, you'll see immediate references to the painting practice. I probably won't talk about, you can find that for yourself. But this work in particular was a continuation of a show called Tū Te Manu o Tarangi that we did in the early 2000s, so about 25 years ago, when Rangi he formed the basis of the narrative for that show, and this is really an extension of that. So it's lovely to hear Mara's kōrero and the influence that Rangi Mātāmua has had on Mara, because it's the relationship here as well. Saffronn is, you'll see, Tūhoe. There's other iwi there, but she's Tūhoe. And so she is very much of the people from Maunga Pohatu, from Waimana and Waiho. And what you see before you is very much informed by the people of Tūhoe. Not just the narrative, but the visual vocabulary in Tūhoe. If you visit the houses that we were talking about Te Kōti earlier on, you visit those houses, you'll understand where this visual vocabulary comes from. It's not immediate, but when you understand it at a visual level, you go, oh, that's why that's that colour, that's why that's that composition. This work and it was commissioned for Saja, and like Mara, you know, it's hard to reconcile what's happening over there. We were there not just over a year ago in the Emirates, Dubai, Saja, and with the people who are a peaceful people, and they reminded us of the teachings of te whiti and tohu. And so to think back that we were there showing this work, and now with what's happening, it's hard to reconcile. But this work in particular was commissioned by Megan, and personally and for both of us, it was awesome to see one of our leading curators on the world stage operate at that capacity, and absolutely for us, place our kōrero in the wider global discussion and context in another place. And for me, it's a lot of work for us to do to empower our curators. Nigel's here. We saw what he did with Toi Tū, and there's a video on that, so he's become a rock star. But you know, to see this building built out of the hands of people who are passionate about its history is lovely to be here in this building. And so we just feel grateful, but the work itself, as Megan said, speaks about the relationship of the celestial bodies and the terrestrial bodies. And so it's very much a conversation between the Kauairunga and the Kauairaro, and also going through extending into ngā kaupeka o te tau, so from the maramataka into seasonal changes. Not seasonal in the way we think about it, but seasonal in the way that is returning to us. So that's probably enough for me, unless there's other questions.
I was just going to say, Saffronn was instrumental in terms of the kaupapa of the show too, because she asked quite pertinent, she thinks, and she asked quite pertinent questions. And her one question to me was, how can I put work in a place that I've never been to? So two of the concepts, I mean, the show was called Ehi, and two of the concepts, one was waiwai tapu. So I thought about that because I wanted people to be able to bring their whole selves to a country that wasn't theirs, and that tikanga around what it is to be a visitor in somebody else's place. And then the other, the inverse of that was geography as structure, so it was grounded locally and to look at those cross-cultural solidarities. But I have to say, without Saffronn's quite innocent question and just, you know, her whakaaro, the way that she sees the world, when she said, how can I? She actually wrote me this really beautiful email which kind of said something like, you know, when you first asked me to be in charge, you know, and to make this work, I felt quite anxious. And then she said, and then I thought about what I could do and what I could take there to give to those people that might be of value. And then she said, and then I decided that there was nothing I could give them, that who was I didn't know. What could I do? I couldn't do anything. There was nothing I could put in place. But then, because I talked to her, I put a lot of senior women artists in my project, a lot of senior. Mine was, I'd say, 94% First Nations. My project, there was 5 projects. Mine was primarily First Nations, and I had people like Faye Heavyshield, and what was really interesting, she's quite a senior Kānai, Blood Nation, Blackfoot artist in her 70s. Saffronn and her, their work was very similar in terms of the economy of materials that they both use, both painters, but use paper paint, and also very grounded. She's a native Blackfoot speaker, so there was those kinds of synergies, and I had a lot of very senior women, because for me, often those women are the knowledge holders and translate those things. So I think she also liked that, and the connection between Ngāti and myself and her children. You know, she thinks quite, so that she said yes, I was extremely grateful, because she might have said no. And as I said, I felt very lucky with everybody who agreed to be in that project. And we did a 15 Ngāti, Kura and Inaha Waikiripuru did a 15-hour whakawātia across the Emirate the day before the media launch and opening. It was just for us. We had 2 cars, and they were so amazing there because they were like, call to prayer, absolutely. So they kind of understood it in their own terms. We had 2 cars that travelled across the Emirate, and it was just like full wānanga the entire time. Did this 15-hour, I kept on saying, do you want to stop now? Would you like to have a break now? But they were like happy. Moved right across the Emirate. Ana Iti travelled, me, Hanahiva and Ana Iti travelled in 1 car, and these Ngāti, Inaha, Saffronn, their boys, and Kura travelled in another car. And they filled up the car with like chicken katsu at the back. In the boot we had chicken katsu and drinks, and everywhere we went, people was like call to prayer, and they just joined us. So it was the most extraordinary, I can still see it and feel it. It was the most extraordinary thing. I felt like it was really important. And I have to say, Kura and I returned, and she kind of did all the things to close it. They were kind of resistant to that because they were done with us. But, you know, they were on to the next bit. But we persisted, and we just did it quietly and in our own way. There was 1 gallery where everyone gathered to do, because not everyone could, it would have been 600 people gathered, and there was a guy called Salah Hassan, who I think he's from Ghana, and he runs the African Institute, very learned man, used to be at Princeton. He said to me, I don't know what they said, Megan, but it was powerful. So everyone loved it. Zeynep Oz, one of the Turkish curator I work with, who doesn't believe in anything, complete atheist, actually cried when we did. So she was completely moved, and it became part of the project, absolutely. And I felt like it set it up. So I'm extremely grateful to Ngāti and Kura for undertaking that work.
Yeah, if you know Seth, she's very deliberate, and much like Megan and Mara and Anna, it's very meticulous in her thoughts, in her research, and in her intention and process. And so she had to reconcile what she could contribute in a land that was foreign to her, to a people that was foreign to her. But going back to her practice, when we had children, her focus shifted. She really became interested in creating works that was directly talking to the next generation. And so you'll see there was an exhibition commissioned for the Suta, Anna Marie White. If you know her work, you'll see that show was directly thinking about how can I talk to my babies. Then you had the 5 Māori painters show, and that work there was it was an ori-ori. It was a work that spoke directly. And so this work here, you'll see in its scale and its composition, is intentional in talking to the next generation, and in particular activating their curiosity in space, and bringing and drawing them in to the wonder of our ancestral wisdom and the narratives that come down through genealogy into current practice. And so this she was wondering how will this be received in Saja, and we were really fortunate enough to go to the desert and spend some time with some star people, and I guess it's one of the beautiful things about the Kauairunga, the celestial bodies, is that they're universal in more ways than one. And so we found our place through the stars, even though their rotation meant that they were, the composition was different. We could still say, oh, te nā koe reua. talk, this is our name for that star, and they told us. So we were very fortunate to just present that, and particularly Saf in her Tūhoe humble way, on what was a really big, how many artists? A lot of artists, a lot of things going on.
Well, in my show there was 27 artists, 36 projects, but in the show altogether there was, I can't remember how many hundred there was, and we had each 5 threes.
Yeah.
You know, there was, everyone had 30, at least between 25 and 30 artists each. Some had 40. There was like 650 works, and it runs across 5 cities within the Emirate. One of the spaces, Kura and Inaha there, Tamati and Stu, Tamati Hiapo Collective made a work that was way out in Kalba. The work was received, so people loved it. They really got it. The lunar calendar, of course, in Islamic culture is really important. Everything follows the moon, so they really understood it. Albert's headed carver ceremonies there. I mean, it was kind of extraordinary. There were a lot of cross-cultural kind of connections, and to be in a kind of a non-Western context globally was really exciting. I felt really exciting. And the response to the work and the show was, they really loved it. I have to say, I think Zainab did the best show, and then mine was second out of the 5. I certainly kicked ass, so it was pretty good. The work stood up. I just felt like I put a whole lot of geniuses in a space, and then it just went off.
As a Tarangi people, we are humble people.
Yeah. That's my Tahu side.
Yeah, that's the Tahu side. But just finally, it's the same in travelling to Sharjah as it is travelling here.
Absolutely.
And in that, we're very conscious of place and space and the people who hold the space.
Absolutely.
And so it was lovely to be taken around and view and meet the maunga here, Matariki, and know that the kōrero is here as well. So hopefully when people come through it, they see their kōrero in the work. I'm sure they will. But just Manos, Nathan,
absolutely,
he gave us a list of stars and took us out in 2000 and when was that, 4 or 5? 2006.
20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago he gave us a list of stars, well before it was popular, and that was from Māori Marsden. And we've still got that handwritten list, and so it's like we've returned back to the north, the place where, admittedly, one of the sessions outside was over a bottle of whiskey, but the stars are a bit blurry that night, but anyway, but the knowledge is all connected, and so, but again, to the people of the gallery, we feel very blessed to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, but that's me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening again. As Ngāti said, I mean, for me to return this work to here, it's been such a special opportunity to be able to curate a show for here. I'm extremely grateful to Larissa and to the board members for enabling that to happen. It's the first show I've curated since Sharjah, so for me it felt like the right time, and then it crossed over to Matariki just the time, just by chance, for me made it all make sense, so thank you so much. And we're out.
I just wanted to share,
Yes.
when I did a show here, Kahungunu, Nomads of the Sea, that also came from Sharjah.
I know.
So it feels, this gallery, Rhino, has actually a lot.
Has a lot. For me,
There's a strong connection to a very different phenomenon across the world.
I saw your show in 2019. I think you were the only other Māori artist that had been in Sharjah before these guys. That's the only reason you weren't there with us. But I remember seeing how extraordinary that work was and visiting it in Sharjah. We had one day and we just ran around like galas to see the whole show. But it was extraordinary to see your work there and for it to play out. And I mean, often you're at the front. Everywhere I used to go in Australia, they also say, do you know Lisa Rayhan? I was like, well, lucky I like her. She was always in there before I was, and she was kind of the nomad of the sea, had kind of opened that space for others. So that's how I saw it, that you'd kind of open that space for others to kind of stand in. So extremely grateful to you and James as well. Thank you. It was
So cool to have such a big showing. We were quite a different mob, but I can imagine.
Yeah.
I wish we could have gone because
I wish you
most
could too.
interesting. We found it so political and so beautiful, and the works that we saw there were incredible.
And the people so beautiful. People the people that I worked with used to, hello, Miss Megan. I go, hello, but they were just the idea of Manaki, they really looked after people. Hospitality is very important. Very humble people, very cultural people, deep culture, understood the relationship between us and them. There was no question around, as I said, when we wanted to do the whakawatia, they were like, just set us up so we could just go and do it. As I said, at the other end, they were like, we don't want to know about you. But I said it's really important. So in the end, they gave us cars, and Kura and I and Stu cruised through and closed it. It was beautiful. So, but yeah, I absolutely remember your work in that space. I'm thrilled that it was here. Yeah, I just felt like it was cool. Yeah.
Megan, can I just make a tiny correction?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that the Maniapoto that you would like to have in this exhibition was in the collection of the Whangarei Art Museum.
Oh, sorry,
But it is the
museum.
Whangarei Museum. It's only one word difference, but it is crucial.
Sorry.
The Whangarei Art Museum is a sister museum of the
Sorry.
They would
My
have
fault.
definitely given it to us.
We would have.
No, so the Whangarei Museum is part of Kiwi North, and we've put effort into getting that taonga here as part of the exhibition, and it wasn't granted, which is very disappointing and frustrating.
So that's an old piece of writing.
I'm just going to say goodbye to Megan because she's...
They emailed saying it was cancelled and now it looks like it's gone. So I'm going to try and get it, but I might be back.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah, no, I think it was good. I think Pikiti Ora was also going to have a conversation with the museum. But I said, look, don't worry about it if it doesn't happen this time. The thing is, just open the conversation because next time they might say yes. They were just resistant, But I just thought it would have been lovely just to give it some mana. I worked with what I could do, but that there's a handwritten one by Mitititai's son, just to me has the other gravitas because it's got the human hand. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Conceptually, it's present. So I'm sorry if I said art museum, I meant museum.
Let's have a coffee.
Let's have a coffee. Let's have a coffee. Is there? No, it's all good. Yeah.
Awesome.
No, thank you. You were amazing. You're amazing. Amazing. I'm sorry I was not humble.
No, I was just joking.
I know. I was like, that's my knife on the side.
That's my Atiawa side. Joking.
That's my knife on the side. It was amazing. No, I think it was the strangest thing. But I tell you, the fucking idea for me was really, you know what's interesting? You know what was interesting who's like full on, in terms of gravity, my masters. No, it wasn't amazing. She's foundational. In terms of the fact that she's very that's what she just said. So I